It looks like NASA is finally go fever again. In a bold statement at a press release, after years of stagnation, Chinese competition, and shriveling from the blinding successes of the supernova SpaceX, NASA has today unveiled their secret Mars program as they aggressively promise to land 3 consecutive human crews to live on the surface of Mars by 2028. Fasten your seatbelts, strike the subscribe button. This rocket takes off in 4,
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, visionaries. We will get humans to Mars and the moons of Saturn one day, but it's not necessarily going to be NASA that does it. My goal is not to put you to sleep, but let me read off a few of NASA's actual releases. October 9th, NASA release states that the media is invited to look at the new spacesuits for the moon. Hey NASA, 1969, we already went to the moon. October 7, 2019, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine will tour SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California to see the progress the company is making to fly astronauts to and from the International Space Station. Let's hope Jim at NASA learned something from Elon. October 4, 2019 talks about a topography mission that ended on October 1st. Previous releases have mentioned the United States hitching a ride with the Russians to get to the space station. Who in the 1970s would believe that the U.S. would be dependent on its Cold War rival? Let's face it, visionaries. Our future has been stolen. Where are those flying cars in every garage, our colonies on the moon, and our teleportation machines? I was 5 when we landed on the moon, and 12 when Viking landed on Mars. And if anyone had told me that I'd be in my 50s and we wouldn't have cities on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, I would have just thought they were just plain crazy. Because the vision we had of the future definitely included human expansion into and beyond the solar system. We, or the NASA folks, were just more aggressive in the 1960s. What happened? If you have ideas of your own as to why you think we slowed down as a space program, blast your comments below. It helps us to grow as a community of futurists. In my opinion, there are many things holding us back from advancing technologically faster than what we should be, but I'm only going to hit on a few points. If you're not familiar with the film Soylent Green, it was a film in 1966. It was a sci-fi movie featuring an overpopulated New York City. The main character is a law enforcement officer, and he's investigating a murder. In the process of investigating, he finds out that the Soylent Green, the supposed plankton wafer that everyone must eat, due to their starvation and overpopulation, is actually dead humans. In the final scene, he yells, "Soylent Green is people." The future, to me, seems rather limited and doesn't really exhibit the great potential of human ingenuity, well, at least from this movie's point of view. The Soylent Green future is more in line with the 1970 Harvard biologist George Wald's estimated belief that civilization will end within 15 to 30 years. This was not unique. Often there have been leaders that did not want to advance technology until they had all the problems on Earth solved. This is kind of unfortunate because the new technologies could have been the things that answered those problems. As a matter of fact, some leaders tried to cancel the moon landings after the fire inside Apollo 1 sadly took the lives of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. Fortunately, Gus Grissom, he had a quote that he had said before he had passed, and it helped to save the Apollo program. So I'm not going to do it justice, so I'm going to actually read the quote itself.
So here's the quote here. And this is Gus Grissom's own words before he passed away in that Apollo 1 fire. He says, "If we die, we want people to accept it. We're in a risky business, and we hope if anything happens to us, it will not delay the program. The conquest of space is worth the risk of life." The conquest of space is worth the risk of life. So we're always going to have pioneers that are willing to go out there, and they're going to take those chances to help us grow as humans. So these guys were the real space pioneers.
Yes, there it is. 50 mathematical ideas you really need to know. If you do not have it, obtain it by striking the link below. It could be considered a textbook for our training.
Now just consider this for just 1 second. If we had farms on Mars, or one of the moons of the gas giants such as Jupiter, would we even be discussing limited resources? Restricting growth could arguably slow down science. If I become a caveman to reduce the use of resources, it gets me nowhere. But besides, let's think about it, in the end, it's a moot point, because in the end, ultimately the sun swallows us anyway. In my opinion, we have no option. We must go the Star Trek route. Don't get me wrong, and don't get too depressed. We're still moving forward, but slowly. We do have FaceTime, but when I was in elementary school in the 70s, I remember an AT&T Systems poster on the wall showing a person talking to a person they could see on a monitor. I expected this version of the Jetsons in 1975, not 2010 with FaceTime. The war on cancer was declared in 1972, and only relatively recently we are making strides using DNA, which was discovered in 1953. I don't know about you pioneers, but I choose to look to a more Star Trek type future with 3D televisions and travel to exoplanets. This type of camp thinks big, believes in a limitless and an expansive future. It does take chances, but we must take the risk. I'd rather be Dr. Frankenstein and, rather than, say, a timid Mary Shelley. Much of the 1960s pop culture thought this way as well. There were adventurous children's books such as Tom Swift, a long list of futuristic TV shows that you could watch, along with the fascinating New York World's Fair that made people dream of tomorrow, and Seattle's World Fair, which brought us the Space Needle. The belief was that you could not stop science. I like to see a future that includes space travel for all and the ability to relocate on other new Earths, with exploration resembling the, say, 15th century explorers sailing their ships to the New World. Hit those comments below. I'll be interested to see how advanced you think humans will get. Now, let's sum up the idea with a second point. I believe NASA today is tangled in the red tape and bureaucracy, whereas the old NASA was mission-oriented. NASA in the Apollo era stated a mission and then built the technology around the mission, whereas the NASA today takes existing technology and pet projects and builds the mission around them. What do you guys think? Is a more interesting mission having mankind actually walk on the moon, or have your spacecraft go around and round in circles, never leaving low Earth orbit? Imagine two families, each building a house for themselves. The first family gets an architect to design it. Then they buy the materials needed to build their ideal home. That type of NASA is the Apollo era NASA. Now family 2 goes to the swap meets and other places to buy random house materials. Okay, sounds innocent enough, but then after they get all the materials that they think that they need for a house, they hire a construction team to build a house with the materials that they have just accumulated. That is NASA today. Which house would you like to live in? Not only that, but the technology, aka spin-offs, we got from Apollo NASA paid humanity back and then some. Here's a few technologies we got in the 1960s and 1970s. Don't lose hope. If NASA gets mission-oriented again, it will inspire a new generation of engineers and scientists. Think of all the intellectual capital that was gained from the Apollo program. I don't think I would have gone to graduate school to become a mathematician if I didn't think I was going to become an astronaut. Giant goals create giant actions, which creates giant motivation, which induces maximum creativity to create giant results. Now that's what we need in a space program. Humans will one day travel outside the solar system. There's no stopping us, because there will always be a few visionaries to pull the masses. So if anyone tells you it's impossible, refute them with a few of these quotes. Let's do this.
Do not forget, strike the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of the video screen.